Good morning. This is your virtual tutor here. I've never done this before, so apologies if this is a purely amateur production, and I promise you that the one thing worse than having to watch me in video is me watching myself in video. You'll have seen my email by now about how this is going to work. I'm going to talk to you about your upcoming assessment for a few minutes. Then I will send out the quiz questions in a group email. After that, I will post today's exercise, again on email. So, assessment 2 is worth 30% of your final grade, so it is a big deal, and therefore you need to take it seriously and produce some top quality work. Judging by some of your early features efforts in class, I think you're more than capable of doing that. Nuts and bolts first. The deadline has been pushed back to March the 30th, I believe. Given the disruption to your schedules and possibly your interviews, that should give you some breathing space. The word count is between 500 and 1,000, with no further 10% leeway this time, because there is already a big margin in there. It's a profile feature on a person of your choice for a publication of your choice. It's got to be a person who has done something notable in their life or experienced something newsworthy. It could be about success, failure, triumph, tragedy, an emotional experience, and it should be about ordinary people. It says in the instructions that it should not be about celebrities, but I think it still works if it's a person who was once in the public eye doing something or experiencing something completely different from what they were best known for. Last year, for example, one of the students wrote about the drummer in a Scottish band who had stopped touring to care for a relative with a rare illness. That kind of thing is fine. You should tell your story through anecdotes, observation, descriptions, and, as I keep going on about, quotes. Plenty of quotes. At the risk of sounding like an old game show host, what do quotes mean? Marks, lots of them. I did mention observation and description there, and this might be more difficult if you haven't already done the interview, because the advice from the university now, on safety grounds, is to avoid interviewing people in person. I will make allowances for this, but you know, I might be 105 years old, but even I know about Skype and FaceTime, so you could use these. It goes without saying that your story should be true, based on real life facts, so check, check, check. All the quotes, details, anything at all in the story must be real and able to be checked out and verified. In other words, don't make stuff up. I have secret powers and I can tell. And don't forget your research notes, word count, target publication, attached feedback sheet. I know, this is all the boring stuff, but it's in the instructions and it costs you marks if you don't. So what will I be looking for? Original ideas and approaches, imagination, good writing, proper structure, and here we go again, quotes, 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 and more quotes. You'll find all the instructions in my place. If any of you are having problems with your feature, have any questions, need advice, then drop me an email. I will get back to you as soon as possible. If there are any particularly common problems, I'll maybe post another short video. What I'll do now is try to anticipate some of the questions with points from previous years. This is the popular one. Should it be written in a Q&A format? I know it's a nice simple way to do it, but I would try to avoid this. It works sometimes with a celebrity, especially if the agreement for the interview is to send them questions in advance. It also works if the point of the piece is about particular information, like asking a government scientist for detailed advice on how to cope with coronavirus. It's much better to go for more of a narrative flow. So, how do you find a subject to do your profile on if you haven't got someone already? Well, ask folk, ask your parents, other relatives, friends. Do they know someone or anyone who has done something extraordinary in their lives? You know, perhaps a war hero or a foster mum, or someone who volunteers at a food bank. Look up local voluntary groups, find out who runs them, who's involved with them. Check out your local paper or some of the local groups on social media. Maybe look out for someone who's taken it upon themselves to organise help for the elderly during the current crisis. Think about your old pals or even teachers from school. Did any of them ever make the news or do something out of the ordinary? And of course, you have to make every effort to interview the main character in your feature. This is not as obvious as it sounds. It is possible to do a profile piece with quotes about a person from others, but they would have to be clearly qualified to have strong opinions and also have expert knowledge of their subject. But where possible, a direct interview is always going to be preferable. You must also have more than one source, and the second person outside of your main character must be quoted or at least paraphrased in your story. This second source is important to add authenticity, or, if the interview is controversial or confrontational, to provide balance. So, if you're writing about someone who's run 10 marathons, you'd want a quote about their dedication from perhaps a coach or someone from a charity they are raising money from. I've been asked before if you can interview someone from another country, and yes, you can, but bear in mind your target publication has to be a local or regional newspaper or magazine in the UK, so your story has to be relevant to the audience. And one last thing on the target publication, not a campus paper, please. That does not qualify. What about your own opinions? I would say avoid these if possible. If I come to a feature or any story for that matter, I want to know what the people in this story think.